Thanks very much, Michael, and welcome back. The topic tonight, as we'd mentioned earlier, the provincial administration row. We want to take a look at the mandate and the role of the provincial administration as we've known it under the previous constitution. Now, this was the role to oversee administration, development, security in 8 provinces. Of course, these now are the 8 regions, 71 districts, 476 divisions. We have 2,516 locations and 6,841 sub-locations countrywide. Now, these were their administrative centers. Their mandate to coordinate the overall government business, the maintenance of law and order. We've seen that a lot, whether it was the cracking down on Mirai and other substances. The campaign against drug abuse, definitely an area where Kenyans would have wished to see more of the provincial administration leading the forefront. State visit coordinations, the providing administrative services, the management of national and international boundaries. We've seen that when we've had trouble against with our lawless neighbors, and of course the promotion of statehood and nationhood, something that is going to come into key focus post the 2007 elections and the violence that was related with that, and an area we want to see devolved governments taking the lead. This is how it was structured under the office of the president, the minister, then to the provincial commissioner, to be replaced, some say, by regional commissioners, the district commissioner, the district officer, and then the chiefs. And with all of that, let's see what else was expected of them. There we go. In the new constitution, we have a 5-year period within which to restructure the provincial administration. It gives the central government power to intervene in counties, meaning especially in areas of misappropriation of funds. The central government does have a role there to play, and requiring central government to coordinate with the county governments for the overall good. But our big question tonight is, do Kenyans need the provincial administration? We want to welcome you to SMS in your views. 8040 is the number. We'll be sampling your responses and announcing the poll result at the end of this very live newscast. But now, to welcome my guests in studio here at the Standard Group Center. On my far right, Honorable Jeremiah Kioni, thank you for coming in, the Ndaragwa MP, and Dr. Maurice Mbondenyi, thanks also for making time, the head of the Faculty of Law at the African Nazarene University. Gentlemen, if we could begin with both your perspectives, what do you feel should be the fate of the provincial administration?
Thank you. I think one of the things that is very clear is we have the constitution that now we are using clearly provides that the provincial administration would be restructured. So what we'll be looking at is what kind of a structure is it going to take. The issue of abolishing it does not arise because the constitution is very clear. It is how do we restructure it? What shape or form does it take? Because there are clear laws that must be performed by the new system. Whatever it will be called, we may not want to call it provincial administration. Maybe we want to call it the national administration, whatever. But that is what is clear and is provided for in the constitution that we just passed.
Perhaps let me be even more direct. Is there still a place for PCs and DCs and DOs, do you feel?
One is that PC is a provincial commissioner. That title talks about provincial commissioner.
DO,
we don't have provinces anymore. In your introduction, I had you mention of regions.
Yes.
Those we also don't have them. What we have are 47 counties. And how the national government would want to provide services to the nation with full respect of the devolved government. That is what I think, that's the debate that we are in, and is a debate that we need to keep turning around until we are able to come up with a system that is agreeable to all people.
Dr. Mbondenyi.
I think before we even discuss the subject, we need to put ourselves to speed as to why we need to discuss as to, whether we still need, or whether the provincial administration is still relevant. Now, when you look at the Constitution of Kenya, and specifically Schedule 6, Section 17 is so clear that within 5 years after the effective date, the national government shall restructure the system of administration commonly known as the provincial administration to accord with and respect the system of devolved government established under this constitution. Now, we need to ask ourselves, what was the intention of the draftsman? What was the intention of Kenyans? Because this document belongs to Kenyans. Was the intention of Kenyans per se to scrap the provincial administration, or was it to restructure it so that it fits into the system? And definitely the intention of Kenyans is expressed through this document, which we call the Constitution. So to me, restructuring should be done, and as Mheshimiwa has clearly put it, now the question is not whether or not restructuring should be done, but how should it be done so that it accords with and respects the system of devolved government.
To look like what is my next question, which Honorable Kearney, you had in your intro, that is the big question. What do you think a restructured provincial administration should look like?
Let me say that maybe in my mind I do not know, I have not given it the thought as to how it should look like. But there are the functions that it must perform, and the functions that we expect this new system to perform should then dictate the form and the structure that it takes. Again, and the most crucial thing is, with due respect and with the total recognition that we now have a devolved system of governance. So we have to ensure that when we have a person from the national government at the county level, how do they relate with the governor?
Before I bring in Dr. Mbondanyi, you've talked about the functions that you do feel we need to have provincial administration, whatever it is it will be called, operating within such boundaries. What would they be for you?
By and large, actually, are the functions that you have just gone through and that were used to be performed by the provincial administration. Those functions are there, and the Constitution leaves it within the mandate of the national government. So the national government must come up, and that's why the word structure was used, must come up with, and let me rephrase it, that the national government must come up clearly. How are they going to make sure that these services are given? And I think the most important thing in the whole of this process is that the mwananchi, right there at the bottom, must get the services nearest to him or to her.
Is there, Dr. Mbondanyi, with that line of thought, the fear that there could be definitely the duplication of roles between what governors and the administrators should be doing and the provincial administration? Should we keep it status quo but just changing the name? Because there is the general understanding that governors will have certain roles, largely to run counties like their CEOs, and then what would remain for the central government is largely in issues such as coordinating security and, of course, this overall look at the financial status of counties and ensuring that the finances are being used appropriately. Indeed,
there is a founded fear that there would be duplication of roles and duplication of functions. But at the same time, okay, when you look at the issues that have been articulated in the Constitution, you realize that the counties and the governors, specifically the deputy governors and all those who are involved in the devolved government, have got specific roles and functions that have been stipulated broadly in the Constitution, but yet to be legislated, in Parliament. Now, the ball is entirely in the court of the legislators and the Constitution, the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution, that would define how the devolution would occur without conflict in structures. Now,
as a law lecturer, and we're
yes,
talking about legislation, what do you think are some of the things they need to look out for to ensure that these two roles are separate? And indeed, may I add to that, the respect of who is answerable to who? Do we still have the structure of whatever it is provincial administration is going to be called being answerable to minister, OP, or are they answerable now to governors? Whose word takes precedence?
That's really interesting. But the first and foremost thing that we need to ensure is, one, the devolved units remain intact and they're not, they're not jeopardized one way or the other. That is the starting point. Then how do we ensure that? That is the question we need to ask ourselves. How do we ensure that the devolved units are not interfered with? Now, we said that the provincial administration is there to represent the government at the devolved level of governance. How do we ensure that there is no conflict between these units, or rather the provincial administration and these units?
How do we?
It's so clear.
How do we?
It's so clear. It's so clear. Because at the moment, the role of a PC or a DC or a DO or a chief, for that matter, is to ensure that the eyes and the ears of the government are on the ground.